Hi there guys, welcome back. Following the success of my previous Franken Mamod, this is a follow-up using not the boiler from the steam traction engine, but a boiler from a steam roller. Slightly different shape on the front, rather like the Mamod emblem that's been carved into the end there. This is, I'm thinking, probably an 80s or 90s one, not particularly old. Everything seems to be metric on this as well. It's in terrible condition, as you can see, but should be easy enough to clean this up, get these deposits off, and I'm intending to spray the whole thing in a heat resistant black. Okay, so what we have here is the inspiration for this project. This is a skid-mounted stationary engine put out by a company called Case somewhere towards the end of the 19th century. So just before the internal combustion engine came along and kind of took over. And these things were used for long-term stationary power solutions. They were a mainstay in the provision of power for factory line shafts, for sawmills, for electric generators, that kind of stuff. Oftentimes also the boiler steam itself was tapped off to provide heat, hot water and steam, of course, for other factory engines that may have required steam but not had their own boilers. So effectively, as you can see, what we have here is a traction engine with no wheels. I'm going to make a couple of these, I think. I'm going to use bits of oak for the skids, but a really simple build. And as you can see here, the intention basically being to spray it in one colour black is to get as close to a replica of this using standard components as we possibly can. So I shall be making a post to go under the front end. But before we do all that, we're going to need some bits. So back into the box. Now, I found this years ago. That is, has been sitting in my parts bin for a while. It was actually with the intention of sticking this on the back of a traction engine, but that hooks onto there. So that's quite a nice little burner, basically the burner and the firebox completely sorted there. We are going to need a few bits and bobs. Now, as with the one that I did for the the one that became known as Steamy McDangerface, long story, this one has come with all of the inserts intact, it seems anyway, which is nice. It's obviously going to need some fresh fibre washers on these, but they are, other than this one, which is a 3/16, they are quarter inch Imperial. That's BSF thread. I'm assuming that that's because they wanted all of the Mamod stuff to be reverse compatible. So what have we got here? First things first, we're going to need a steam safety valve. Now I could make one of these, I probably will make one of these in fact for this, but that's just a standard one from my pile of bits. And that does seem to fit quite nicely. I'll not drive that all the way in just yet. I don't have a spare whistle at the moment. I used my spare whistle on the rebuild of the stationary engine. I'll link to that one in the description here. So I'm going to have to probably fabricate a whistle. Leave a comment down below. I'm going to have to, as I say, either buy one or make one. I prefer to make one for this. So we have options, single tone, two tone. There are a few videos out there on how to make steam whistles. So what's your pleasure? Leave a comment down below, let me know, and I'll weave that one into the narrative later on. We're going to need, as with the other model, crank. These will all need polishing up, so this is just another picked up from eBay special. That should go through there. We need a flywheel. One of those. These just push fit ones. That runs smoothly enough. a number of different options on cylinders. This one's run in, so I should use this one. It's quite an old one, this one. It actually has a little bronze bushing at the bottom there, which is quite nice. On the end of the trunnion pin, the only downside is it can fire across the room when you're putting them back together, so be careful with these. Okay, just going to use a pair of pliers here just to nip that up, otherwise when they're wobbling around in the test firing they can ping across the room and you'll never find all three parts. Okay, so that should pop on there, which it does. Super. Horrendously rusty. I'll probably end up manufacturing a new one, but it'll do us for now. Now this one has a hideous, let me just zoom you in here so you can see it's got a hideous kind of blue, well, bluish it was once, sort of plastic thingy on it. Let's get a proper fibre washer. And there's really only two types of fibre washers you need, by the way. I'll zoom you back out. There's the ones for the 3/16 and there's the ones for the 1/4 inch. The only difference between the two being the size of the hole down the middle. For about £3 or £4 you can pick up 25 of those on eBay. That's where I've got mine from anyway. Okay, so the fill port is nice and tight. I don't have a whistle. What are we going to do about this? Let me just plug that for now with a 1/4 inch fill port plug, and we'll come back to that. This is really just as I say, a test firing just to make sure that the model actually holds steam pressure. I shall put some chaffing fuel in here, so that is all ready to go. Super easy. And with this one still having the firebox, incredibly easy to mount as well. I should probably just put this one straight onto a wooden base. Now I'm going to make a little dome, imitation steam dome, to go on the front. That's where the steering would have been on the original. And of course with this, the hole that I'm going to use to put the nose mount underneath is a little bit forward of the chimney. In the steam traction engine, the steering is done through the chimney and straight out the bottom, but on this one I'm going to have to factor in a bit of an angle at the top of that post. There we go. Okay, so I just did a quick pressure test off camera there using one of these. It allows you to connect a foot pump onto the 1/4 inch inserts and just see how it's holding pressure. In this case, it's not. It's not taking a good joint all the way around. So what I'm going to have to do here is I am going to have to take out those two rivets from the top, slide the boiler out, and deal with the boiler separately. Almost certainly that is why this particular model was broken for parts and why the boiler was so cheap. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take these out. They're only aluminium, so little pop rivets, never so easy to replace. I'm just going to grind the tops out of those, just using a countersink and a hand drill. That way I'm not going to go too deep and actually cut the brass. If it gets a little bit difficult, you can use drill bits, but I'll come to those in a sec. Nearly done. That's it, that's one out. Okay, that's it. So that's the standard now disconnected from the top of the firebox. Just take these two little nuts off the end, keep them in a real safe place. And we should be able to get this out. Oh, point to note, the insert itself represents a bit of an increase to the profile, so what you have to do is turn it upside down, which might seem counterintuitive, but you'll notice there's a little slot there, and that is for the insert to come out of. There we go. So boiler separated from the firebox, nice and easy to reassemble that. I'm just going to have to pop a couple of little pop rivets back into those holes through the tops of these. I believe they're 3mm pop rivets, and I can see also, whilst we're at it now that this is loose, that that joint there is also going to need some attention. Let's pop it out so I can basically deal with all of this separately and get some flux on there. This someone's attempted to do this at some point, I think with soft solder, which is fine. I mean, it works. The issue with it is it's not ideal. So there's the that'll need properly cleaning up. I shall wire wall that before attempting to reassemble, and you can see there the tinning of silver solder around the top of the brass boiler. Well, since we've got this taken to bits, I might as well just strip the paint off this green section, give it a good polish. So the next time you see this, it will be all clean and shiny. And I'm just going to go and pop that out and solder it properly. May replace it. And you can see it's still twisting there. Yeah, I may replace that with a homemade one. We shall see. Right, okay, well, that's the strip down. I'll get on and polish and paint strip and so on off camera, and then we can just get back on with the reassembly. So standard with the two pipes, boiler with the chimney still attached. I'm not going to take the chimney off, I don't quite like that. I shall just very carefully put paint stripper around the green bit, put the whole thing on a polishing wheel, resolder that joint, and yeah, see you back here shortly for the next step. Okay, so the silver solder I'm using here is really low grade stuff. This is for audio use. It's about 4% silver, so there's a lot of tin in there, but nothing like as much as normal solder, which is tin and sometimes lead. Right, zinc as well, I think. Anyway, there we go. So we'll be able to see when that melts, and when it does, I shall just give it a little tap in with a pair of pliers. Lovely. Nice clean fillet all the way around the outside there. That's us done. So there you go, there's a finished product. Nice little fillet of silver solder all the way around the outside, using silver solder that melts at a lower temperature than the silver solder that's used on the ends when the boilers are fabricated, so unlikely to damage that in the process, but I am just going to pressure test this now to be sure. So there you go, that's a follow on from the video I did previously on how to actually make these inserts, just to show you quickly how to actually put one into a hole in the boiler. Okay, so the next thing to fix is going to be the freshly polished standard back on to the top. So what I need to do here is pop a little bit of this flux. It's only soft solder that's on here. I'm just going to use what's there already. Just give it a blast, melt it down and reseat that. That surface there is nice and clean, but the flux will help to clean that up. Okay, so a nice big blob of flux around the top there. If anything a little bit too much, we'll just wipe a smidge of that off. I'm just going to hold the standard down on one side just to press the joint nice and closed. Let's go. Okay, so there you go. It's been wiped down now. Nice tidy fillet around the steam feed pipe. So that is basically ready to go. That, as far as I'm aware, is okay, but we'll be keeping a close eye on that, on the grounds that the other one of the two steam ports on the top there, the other quarter inch one, had failed. So I should be, as I say, keeping a close eye on that, and I'll replace it just the same as that one if I have to. So here we are. Needless to say, refitting is the opposite of disassembly. Use the slot at the bottom, twist it over. This bit can be a little bit fiddly. Need to try and realign the little bolts with those holes. Can always stick your finger up through the inside of the firebox to find those if needs be. Now I have used paint stripper on this and rubbed it down so it's a nice even surface, even though it looks a bit sort of raggy in places. That's where the rust's bubbled through the paint, and I've stripped all that back down. So I'm hoping I don't want to use any cure rust or other treatments on there because this is going to get so hot. I'm hoping that the priming effect of the high temperature paint I'm going to be using, which doesn't need a primer, hoping that that is going to keep the surface just right. Can always retreat it if needs be. This one's proving a little awkward. I'm wondering if this is actually the not from the other side. Let me just try these on the other way. Yeah, there you go. These aren't always the easiest things to refit, but word to the wise, they're not always that consistent. A bit like Meccano bolts in that regard. So if you find it's not going on easily, swap them over. I didn't keep a note of which one came off which side. Okay, so fresh fibre washer. As far as we know, that steam port, the fill port there, is okay. Not going to wind that all the way in, there's no need. This is now sitting nicely flush with the top, which it wasn't before. So I can put our steam valves in there with a fresh fibre washer. That's now good and solid. Happy days. Then we've got another one to pop over here. In fact, before we do that, I'll put that in the front one instead, where it actually belongs. And I'm going to put the slightly larger drain plug piece back into this. Now this just turned before, I'm hopeful. Yeah, there we go. That's locked in place nicely. It's going nowhere. Alright, let's get some water into this and get her fired up. But first, we need to attend to the standard. Now there are two little brass washers that go underneath this piece. The easiest things to relocate is using a pair of tweezers here just to get them back in place. And then we need some pop rivets. Now, for anyone who's not seen one of these things before, that is a pop riveter and this is a pop rivet. What's going to happen is this ball end on the nail is going to get pulled through the aluminium sleeve there, and as it pulls through it's going to deform. I'll show you here. You can see it deforms there and it pulls the two faces together, and when you hear the pop, hence pop rivet, it's broken the end off the nail. That is pretty much it, and all we have to do with these is stick them in place, push them down, and use the pop riveting tool there to basically pull that ball end through. Sometimes it takes a couple of attempts to do these. That one's done straight away. Nice. Same with the other one. I'm pushing down at the same time as pulling up with the tool, and there we go. Simple as that. So the standard is now firmly reattached back onto the firebox, and we are ready for the crank and cylinder. Okay, so as you'll remember from before, the crank itself just slides through the holes on the standard. As I mentioned before, watch out with these that you don't lose the spring or any washers and so on that may be attached. Find a comfortable position, push the spring and the bolt through from the back, and the case pop just dropped the little washer. You push it through from the back, put your thumb against it, and then wind the actual cylinder onto the bolt rather than trying to wind the bolt into the cylinder. It's just easier that way. Once that's in place, don't forget to just gently nip up the trunnion bolt itself, otherwise that can work loose when you're firing it and everything just goes winging across the room. And then this just reaches over and goes onto the crank. So that, with its fixed port and fixed steam flow there, should be good to go. Let's get some water in, get it fired up. Okay, a bit of blue towel just to catch any drips. Going to use the fill port just with a standard wash bottle. Squirt that in until when you release the pressure, air stops coming back out. It actually pulls water out instead. And there we go. So that's water being sucked back down to the level of the fill port. So we are good to go. Everything's nice and tight. Let's just get a bit of oil on this as well. Now, those of you who've seen plenty of these videos will know that beating friction is the key with these models. Just going to use some chaffing fuel for this. This is Flamos chaffing fuel. I've mentioned this stuff before. Absolutely brilliant for these little models. It can't boil over, doesn't smell, And you don't have to worry particularly about the distance between the top of the flame and the bottom of the cylinder, unlike using maths, which will not burn properly if it's not high enough. Okay, so here we go. Pop this in here. That all fits nicely. So let's get it lit. If you can see that there, probably can't see it burning particularly well. If I turn the lights out maybe. You can see a blue flame there. Turn the main studio light off. There you go. Just to prove that it is in fact lit. And now we wait. One feature I particularly like about these models is the way that the steam mostly comes up the chimney. Just that added little splash of realism. Very nice. Okay, so she lives. Next stop is the skids and paint job. I'm just going to leave this running in, so thanks very much for watching, guys. Take it easy. If this is your kind of thing, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Cheers.